A quadruple zero in Indiana, overtime thriller in Denver, fourth quarter collapse at the Garden, and a Timberwolves blowout in LA. A crazy first day of the NBA playoffs. Let's talk about it, starting with Lakers Timberwolves. Now, before this game, you tell me that Ant has 22 and Luka has 37. I'm going to tell you that the Lakers won by 20, but in reality, they lost by 22. Timberwolves 117, Lakers 95. What exactly happened here? Well, JJ Redick mentioned after the game that they just were not ready for the physicality of Minnesota, and we knew that was going to be a big part of this matchup because of their size compared to the Lakers. Jackson Hayes played only 8 minutes in this game, which means that the Lakers went small pretty much the entirety of the game, and against not only a team that has someone like Rudy Gobert at the 5, but just size everywhere for Minnesota. You got McDaniels, you got Randall, Naz Reid coming off the bench. This is a big mismatch for the Lakers in terms of size, and they are a pretty matchup-dependent team, which was very apparent in Game 1. Outside of Luka, pretty much nobody played well offensively. He was the only guy that got over 20 points, but more importantly to me, he only had 1 assist, so it kind of seems like Minnesota's okay if Luka wants to try to go for 35, 40 points every game. They're okay with it as long as it doesn't unlock everyone else, and obviously that recipe worked because they held them to under 100 points. And that strategy of Luka can't beat us by himself seems to be working. LeBron had 19, 5 and 3, he was 8 for 18 from the field, but really had a pretty forgettable game outside of a couple of pretty good moments on defense. But again, I think the big takeaway here is just the size difference between these two teams. You're going to get a crazy McDaniels game because of his size against pretty much whoever he's guarding. Yes, the Lakers have a lot of, 4-sized guys and Luka and Rui and LeBron, but they don't really have a perimeter stopper, and the guy that they do have really in Dorian Finney-Smith plays the 5 a bunch for them. So it's just a weird team, especially against a team like Minnesota. It also helps that Minnesota made half their threes, and if that team and that roster with their size and their physicality and Anthony Edwards at the front of it is going to make half their threes, they're going to be pretty difficult to beat. I'm not overly concerned if I'm a Lakers fan. It's just Game 1. It was just a weird offensive game for them, but the matchup doesn't look great, and Anthony Edwards didn't even play that well. Moving on now, though, to Pistons Knicks, arguably the craziest game of the entire day. The Pistons are up 8 going into the fourth quarter of this game. They looked better than the Knicks for the entirety of the game, and then they lose the fourth quarter 40-21, and it's actually worse than that. The Knicks went on a 21-0 run. Honestly, for much of the game, like I said, Detroit looked like the better basketball team. You've got Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris hitting a bunch of threes. Tobias Harris had like 20-something in the first half. Tim Hardaway, who's always liable to go for like 2 points in these kinds of games, showed up in a big way for them. And Cade didn't even play well from a scoring perspective, especially in the first half. Got it going a little bit in the second half, but mostly he was a playmaker and he was getting those guys open threes. But if you thought that Detroit was going to have a chance in Game 1, it probably was going to come down to Cade making a lot of plays for Detroit. And he did make plays, but it's not like he was some big-time scorer. But then we get to the fourth quarter and Detroit just fell apart. And it's obvious that this is a team and a roster that won 14 games last year, although they've added some new pieces in the offseason. It's a franchise that has not been to the playoffs in years, and it's an extremely young roster. And it really showed up in the fourth quarter. A bunch of turnovers really throughout the game, but especially in the fourth. And even though there are some encouraging signs from Detroit, this is an absolutely brutal game to lose. A game that you played better than the Knicks on the road in Game 1 for most of the first 3 quarters, and then to end up losing it by double digits is just insane. But that doesn't mean there isn't concern for the Knicks as well. Karl Anthony Towns guarding the pick and roll is going to continue to be a problem. It was a problem in this game. They did try and run some 2 big lineups with him and Mitchell Robinson at the same time, and that helped a little bit, but that's not the biggest issue for them. The biggest issue for them is Jalen Brunson is not healthy. Yes, he had 34 and 8 in this game. He was awesome in the fourth quarter, but it's really only getting worse, it seems, game by game for him. And as the game went on, he went to the locker room at one point, and if Jalen Brunson is not going to be even close to 100%, the Knicks are not going to be able to do anything remotely close to what they want to do in the postseason this year. And if I'm Detroit going into Game 2, I'm attacking Jalen Brunson every opportunity that I get. Anybody that he's guarding, they're going to get the ball and they're going to attack him, make him work, because I do not think that foot is even remotely close to healthy. And again, if you're the Knicks, yeah, you win the game. That's awesome. But it took a crazy fourth quarter to win Game 1 at home against a Detroit team that has basically no playoff experience amongst all of their young guys. So definitely still some concerns for the Knicks. Moving forward, the Pistons are going to need to continue to shoot well. They didn't shoot a ton of threes in this game, but they made a lot of the ones that they did take. They're going to need to continue to attack Jalen Brunson when he's out there trying to guard, and the Knicks are going to need more from guys like Mikal Bridges if Jalen Brunson is going to be banged up. You can't count on Cam Payne to save you every game. You can't count on some of these other guys. You need some of your best players, guys like Mikal Bridges, to step up if Brunson is going to be banged up. Next up, let's talk about Clippers Nuggets. You want to talk about a crazy game? It kind of got covered up by how insane the end of Knicks Pistons was, but we went to overtime in Denver, and in the first quarter and a half, again, it's pretty similar to that Detroit Knicks game where the Clippers just looked better. They looked like the better basketball team than the home team, in this case, Denver. And Denver was giving up so many easy baskets, so many layups, guys cutting to the rim, Zubac's getting easy buckets to the rim. It was so easy for the Clippers through the first quarter and a half. And you're thinking, okay, yeah, this is a team that their coach has never coached in a playoff game before. They made a massive change right before the end of the season, and they haven't played well since the All-Star break. Basically, that's the reason that their coach got fired. And the Clippers have one of the best records in the entire league over the last 20 to 25 games, and certainly when Kawhi plays. So the first quarter and a half, you're thinking, yeah, this is exactly how the series is going to go. It's just over for the Nuggets. Kawhi and James Harden both looked awesome early. Zubac was awesome. Jokic was frustrated. But again, similar to that Knicks game, the home crowd really changed things for Denver once they started to figure it out. And frankly, late in this game, Kawhi and James Harden kind of threw the game away as it got closer. Bad shots, turnovers, we kind of expect that from James Harden. He made some free throws, but it's not like he was doing a ton for them offensively. And again, some bad shots, some turnovers. But Kawhi as well, he made a couple of shots, but he had a crazy turnover at the end of the game where he was just holding the ball on the side and Jamal Murray just took it from him and it bounced off his leg. And I think it's just kind of a reminder that as great as we all know Kawhi is, he hasn't played in a playoff game in a while, and he only played in 30 games in the regular season. It's just hard to go from not really playing at all to all of a sudden you're in a playoff atmosphere. And frankly, Kawhi looked a little bit lost, which is not something that I had expected. We went into overtime. The Nuggets ultimately take control of the game. And the bottom line from this game is this is just going to be a crazy, crazy series. Both teams are good, evenly matched. It's going to be physical. The home crowds are going to be awesome because the Clippers now have the Dome, and the Denver Nuggets have always had a good home crowd in the Jokic era. Going forward, I'm keeping an eye on Kawhi, seeing how healthy he looks the rest of the series. And again, keeping an eye on the fact that he just hasn't been in a playoff series in a while. Then the last game of the day, Bucks Pacers. This one was really the only not super interesting game because even though Lakers Timberwolves was a blowout, it was at least interesting early, and I feel like we learned a lot. Bucks Pacers almost just felt like a wash because the Pacers jumped on them early. Giannis was playing out of his mind in the beginning of the game, just trying to get to the rim, but really nobody else showed up. Nobody else was scoring. We have Kyle Kuzma putting up a quadruple zero. You watching the video and me making the video, had as many points, assists, and rebounds as Kyle Kuzma did playing for the Milwaukee Bucks in this game. And of course, we're all just waiting on the return of Damian Lillard, and that's going to change a lot of things for this series. I still felt like Milwaukee had a chance in this first game, or first couple of games potentially, without Dame, because Giannis is just that good if they could just make some shots, but nobody could make any shots, and of course, that's what Dame is going to bring. Miraculously, it looks like he's going to return for game 2 or game 3, returning from this blood clot issue that he's had. No one really understands how he's been able to return from it so quickly. Most people thought he was just going to be out for the rest of the year, and him being back means that the Bucks are actually a real threat all of a sudden in the Eastern Conference, not only in the series, but moving forward. Now, unfortunately, they start the series down a game because Dame wasn't able to play in the first one, but it's not like it was anything that he did. It wasn't his fault. And now with him returning, this series suddenly becomes much, much more interesting. Going to continue to keep an eye on which role guys the Bucks throw out there because they keep changing it around game by game. AJ Green made some shots. Bobby Portis did not play well at all. We didn't see a ton of Brook Lopez in the second half because they were down so much and they wanted to play small and space the floor. Kuzma just frankly has to be better. They can't just have someone that they traded for Chris Middleton away for, just putting up quadruple zeros. That just can't be a thing. And I think ultimately this will be a very competitive series. Before the series, I picked the Bucks in 6 because I just thought the physicality of Giannis and the overall size of Milwaukee was going to be a problem. But Indiana played awesome. Again, the home team, that was a big thing in this first day of the playoffs. The only home team that lost was the Lakers, and they lost in a blowout. But that's going to be a big thing to keep an eye on moving forward in the series. The only team that took away home court, of course, was Minnesota against the Lakers. That's everything that happened in game 1 of the NBA playoffs.